It's all quiet in the underground bunker. Doors closed, locks bolted. But the Great One isn't just resting on his laurels. He's making sure your weekend is even better by giving you his best. This is the best of Mark Levin.
It's clear if Donald Trump was not president, Iran would have nuclear weapons. It's that simple. The Democrats, media, isolationists, the American lasters, like Green, like Bannon, like Tarleton, like Gates. God, what a Star Wars bar scene that is. That they have no strength, they have no pull, they have no numbers. They did everything they could to prevent him from ordering our military to take out those sites, but he did it. He had faith in our military, he had faith in his own principles. He understood there was no choice. You understand there's no choice. Massive majorities of you, the American people, wanted those sites taken out. He did what no president before him was willing to do. None. Clinton, Obama, and of course Biden, who funded the enemy. Clinton refused to bomb the nuclear site in North Korea in 1996. So 2006, they came out with nuclear weapons, and now a nuclear weapon. Now they have 50, on the way to 90. So President Trump hadn't done what he did. Despite these countervailing pressures, Iran would be a nuclear Iran. I have no doubt the Houthis would have a nuclear weapon. They talk about the sleeper cells in America. Well, those sleeper cells have been here for years. They didn't just come here over the weekend. I have no doubt they would have tried to get a dirty bomb. Just think of all the possibilities, the ifs. I hear people say, including some of my friends in broadcast, now let's see what the sleeper cells do. Now let's see what they do to our military sites. Now let's see. They act like we don't have experience with this country. They act like they're just as stupid as Marjorie Taylor Greene, who said Iran has never killed an American. They've been killing and maiming and spreading terrorism. They don't need a quote-unquote reaction to what took place in order to keep doing it, and they're going to keep doing it. Look, whether it's Iran, whether it's Hamas, whether it's Hezbollah, the Muslim Brotherhood, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Islamic Jihad, and the list goes on and on and on, they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. Because they believe their faith, as perverse as their approach to their faith is to kill us. That's what God's mandate is. So they kill Muslims who don't agree with them. They kill Jews and Christians. They don't care. Atheists, gay people, they particularly hate. They hate us, America. And they're not going to stop. Even if Iran were wiped off the face of the earth, they're not going to stop. I'm sorry to pour reality on us, but they're not. Let me tell you what's not going to happen to prove my point. We have terrorist working groups, local, state, federal, law enforcement. They're not going away. TSA at the airports, it's not going away. Terrorist units within virtually every metropolitan police department, certainly every federal law enforcement entity, they're not going away. The fence around the White House isn't going away. The bulletproof glass when the president speaks, that's not going away. It's not going away. Of course we have homegrown nut jobs. But we also have terrorists. They're not going away. It's very, very important to understand this. You can only do what you can do. Iran still is a horrendous danger. They're plotting. The communist Chinese are plotting. North Korea is plotting, and so many others. They're not going to back down. North Korea is going to build more nukes. China's going to continue to build up its military as it eyeballs Taiwan, islands off of Japan, Philippines, and beyond. I mean, what the hell? They're on both sides of the Panama Canal. That's not a mistake. They're militarizing the Arctic Circle. That's not a mistake. They have bases in the middle of the Pacific, including in Saipan, where my great-uncle fought. That's not a mistake. They have a base on the west coast of Africa facing our coast. That's not a mistake. These are dangerous, dangerous, dangerous entities. So we can go around with the modern-day peaceniks, even though some of them are fat and slovenly, even though some of them pretend to be ultra-patriotic, even though they pretend to support our troops when they undermine our troops in a time of a battle like this. They have the same voices, the same mindset, and we know this because of Tlaib and Omar and Bernie Sanders, with whom they've united. And so this is a forever fight within the United States. If we want to be safe and free, if you want your children and grandchildren to be the like, this enemy is not going away. One day it's Iran, it's going to be another country, and so forth and so on. What do you want to do, warmonger? What do you mean, what do I want to do? I don't want to go to war with every country. And we're not. It's impossible. It would also be stupid. I told you foreign policy is based on prudence, not ideology. Prudence, not ideology. Each case has to be taken with its facts, intelligence, history, who's in charge. There's a whole long list of things that need to be taken into consideration, far above my pay grade, and that's why we have the great military that we do. They help us figure these things out. That said, all these protections we have in place in our homeland, whatever this ceasefire is or whatever a deal is made, they're not going to go away. Are they? Well, why not? Because the enemy is the enemy. They're not going away. The Islamist Nazi terrorists are not going away. If they can take down another building with 1,000 Americans in it, they're going to do it. If they can assassinate our president, they're going to do it, or at least try. They can slaughter people in a mall or plant bombs or shoot people in the back when they're leaving an event or burn people alive who are protesting. They're going to do it. They're going to do it. And it's not because of what happened in Iran. Everything I just mentioned to you happened before what took place over this weekend. The sleeper cells have been here. The assassination attempt on our president took place. These terrorist front groups are in our country. Not because the Israelis destroyed the Iranian military, not because our military destroyed their nuclear sites. They're here. And there's going to be more of them. They have children and grandchildren. We have federal judges who keep releasing them. They're here. They're roaming the streets. They're destroying our schools. They're creating a whole new mindset in this country, which is embraced by these fake MAGA guys, which is embraced by the Democrat Party, which is embraced by much of the media. This is why we must continue to speak out. We must be resolute. Ignore the slogans and the bumper sticker statements about warmongers and neocons and who's more principled than the next. None of that matters. None of it. This is a fake cabal. This is a fake media and a very, very dangerous Democrat Party. Very dangerous. You have the Arab countries in the Middle East who've united against Iran tonight because they were never supporters of Iran, except for Qatar, who Carlson has praised. But even Qatar got its dander up, if you will. This thing about Iran and the shooting of the missiles, I mean, the president all but said it. The whole thing was play acting. They hit nothing. They were shot out of the sky. The Qataris got a heads up. The United States got a heads up. And apparently the Israelis got a heads up. So they get to save face. This is a regime that is likely now to remain in place unless the Iranian people rise up, which is less likely, I think, at this point. Less likely at this point. That's my take on it. Now, there are people who will try and twist it and attack it. Anytime you want to know what I say, you listen. If you can't listen live, you go to our website, marklevinshow.com. We keep 4 years' worth of archives there. 4 years.
Mark Levin.
Making your weekend even better. This is the best of Mark Levin.
We spent a lot of time on this last night, but I think, considering some of the things that happened really very early in the morning here, during the course of the night and then day in Israel, it's worth reiterating and commenting on. And you'll notice at no time do I trash the President of the United States. I say he's committing this, he's committing that. No. The enemy whose military has been defeated by the Israelis, this was posted last evening, whose nuclear program has been destroyed by our president and military, survives, at least for now. We shall see how things unfold. I've been and remain highly skeptical of deals made with terrorists who have half a century record of killing Americans, Israelis, and anyone else in their way, and refuse to voluntarily abandon their nuclear weapons, lying and deceiving every step of the way. Perhaps this is another POTUS strategy. Perhaps POTUS believes this will smoke them out, and if they do not adhere to ceasefire terms or some agreement, then all bets are off. But they've already been smoked out. And will whatever is agreed to include their proxies? Will Russia stop supplying ground-to-air missile defense systems? Will China stop selling the regime fuel for their ballistic missiles? Will they stop building ballistic missiles? My prediction, based on all of this and more, is that the terrorist regime's belief system and mindset will not be changed at all. Just its tactics, maybe. We shall see how this plays out. Now, that seems to be a very rational comment, and we want the administration to succeed. We want America to succeed, and it seems to me these are crucial issues that still need to be addressed and may well be addressed. And then I added, because I hit the send, as I want to do while I'm on the air here, but I meant to add, and I added quickly thereafter, to be absolutely clear, as I didn't finish my post, that President Trump is to be trusted. He wants to win for America, and his record is stellar. He also trusts that the issues I mentioned here will be part of the process. But Prime Minister Netanyahu has signed on. Let's see how it goes. I'm rooting for them. Now, does that seem like warmonger talk? Does that seem anything like it? I mean, if you're sitting down and you're either working a ceasefire or you get a ceasefire and then you're trying to figure out what to do next, don't you want to know what the Russians are going to do, the Chinese are going to do, the nature of the ballistic missiles and all these other things? Of course. Of course. Of course they do. So what happened? Right out of the box, the Iranians are firing ballistic missiles after midnight, our time tonight. Well, they only fired 2. Maybe it was 1. Maybe it was 4. Oh, okay. The Israelis wanted to respond. The president asked them not to. Also, the head of their atomic weapons program, he declared that this regime intends to reconstruct its nuclear program. He said that. They intend to reconstruct it. The president put out a Truth Social and said, no, they're not going to be able to do that. In other words, the mindset of the Islamo-Nazi regime in Iran has not changed. And it's not going to change. To do that, from their perspective, they have to abandon their so-called religious beliefs. They're not going to do that. They kill and maim. They send out suicide bombers to advance it. Why do you think there's sleeper cells in the United States that have been here? Why do you think they've killed thousands of Americans directly and indirectly over the course of 47 years? Why do you think they wanted to build a nuclear program in the first place? See, they prove the point. They believe they're going to heaven based on how many people they convert, but the people they don't convert, they slaughter. They still didn't unilaterally surrender. We didn't ask them to unilaterally surrender. We have a ceasefire, and we'll see how that goes. And it's much easier for a democracy to place pressure on a democracy, the United States to place pressure on Israel, than it is for a regime for whom pressure doesn't seem to matter. There was a lot of pressure placed on this regime to the lead up of Israel's attack on them. Even to the point where Israel had blown out so much of their military, not the ballistic missiles, they were working on them, but they had a massive stockpile, but their army, their navy, their air force, non-existent for most intents and purposes. Even with threats of our sending our B-2 bombers and taking out their... They never surrendered. In fact, they never gave an inch. Period. They would not agree to the core issue of spinning centrifuges. They were defiant. They put out statements. It'll never happen. So we had to take military action. But the seed of the bloodlust ideology remains. Why do you think we're on high alert today all across the country? Why do you think we haven't closed down TSA? Why do you think the terrorist working groups, local, state, federal, county governments working together, have not closed their doors? This is not peace in our time. Their nuclear weapons are gone, so they can't use them against us. Their conventional weapons have all but been destroyed by the Israelis, who are smeared and attacked by the isolationists. Why? Because they live and they survive and they fight. Any of these people are Holocaust deniers, or they bring Holocaust deniers on their programs. They're anti-Semites. They try to hide it, but they can't anymore. They're out of the closet. And history will speak to them, as history speaks to all these people at one point or another. Books will be written, articles will be written, videos and audios will be made. Who was for America, who was for liberty, who was for democracy, and who was for the opposite. That will be their legacy. But in the present time, our legacy is to confront them and battle them through the political process, through free speech, through freedom of association. Not to be intimidated. These are thugs. But bullies don't survive very long. They just don't. So is it proper to raise questions about this? Of course it is. Was the taking out of their nuclear sites? Does that mean they were going to surrender their terrorist ideology? Of course it didn't. And it hasn't. And it won't. They're not going to stop. They're going to try and kill us. They want more 9/11s, bigger and better. That's their ideology. We have to be prepared overseas and at home. That's the way it is, folks. They're here right now. They said they're sleeper cells. The border was wide open. We've said, others have said, we're sure terrorists have come in. Terrorists from where? From where? Canada? From where? The Bahamas? Where have these terrorists come in from? The Islamo-Nazi terrorists come in from where there's Islamo-Nazis. That's where they come in from. And they're here. Some of them are in our streets at our colleges and universities getting protection by our courts. Many of them are funded by, directly and indirectly, Qatar. Right, Qatarson? What do you think about that? What do you think about Qatarson? Does he ever criticize the Qataris, Mr. Producer? Ever? No. He wants you to believe they're Mahatma Gandhi. But you see, this is the way it is. Now, leadership means everything. A commander-in-chief means everything. That's why you'll have some forever wars, quote-unquote, and there's some wars that are righteous. They need to be fought to save our country, to defend liberty. What was done with our bombers and our bunker busters was righteous. In the name of humanity. Righteous. Everything's not Afghanistan and Biden. Every leader's not Biden and Obama. Certainly Trump is not. He's a tremendous leader. One other thing. I don't buy this moral relativism. Israel is not Iran. And this is where I want to raise this issue. There's nothing to blame the Israelis for. They're trying to survive. Those ballistic missiles are hitting their people. They're hitting their cities while they don't fire on Iranian cities and their populations. There is no moral equivalency whatsoever. Period. It's not about how Israel was going to break the ceasefire, as I just heard one commentator put it. Israel was responding to the Islamic regime that had just fired ballistic missiles into their country. And I want you to think about it. One ballistic missile, what's the big deal? I ask you this. If Mexico fired one ballistic missile into America after having fired hundreds of them into our cities, or if Canada done the same, what would our reaction be? Absolute obliteration. So this is a double standard. There's no question about it. There is no moral equivalency between an Islamo-Nazi Islamist regime that wants nuclear weapons to slaughter us and another country that is democratically elected and with which we share our Judeo-Christian vows. There simply isn't. The mindset of the Israeli government is the same mindset as our government. And what the Israeli government's trying to do to protect its people after the slaughter of October 7th and after the threats with atomic weapons are the same exact thing that our government would do. Even more, I believe. That's why we consider Donald Trump a great leader. That's why Netanyahu is a great leader. Whether the anti-Semites and the isolationists, whether the Marxists and the Islamists like it or not.
Mark Levin.
You're listening to the best of Mark Levin.
Now, in the context of talking about this America-hating, Jew-hating Islamist who's getting the Democrat Party nomination for mayor of New York City, which has the largest concentration of Jews on the face of the earth. Think about that. And we'll get into where he stands and what he really is. Just know this. Global intifada, Global intifada. Intifada is a war, terrorism war against the Jews. He said he has supported it. He said as recently 2023, and the other day he said, look, that's just a rallying cry. It doesn't really mean anything. It means a lot. Intifada 1, Intifada 2 resulted in the murder of hundreds and hundreds of Jews. Blowing up school buses, blowing up pizza parlors in Israel. And this guy blows it off. As a student, he led the chapter, he created the chapter and then led it of Students for Justice in Palestine, which, as you know, is a Hamas front group. He's campaigned for BDS, which is a war on Israel's economy, trying to persuade countries, institutions, our states, colleges and universities, other businesses, to cut off all commercial dealings, financial dealings with the state of Israel, to bankrupt it. This is the guy who wants to be mayor. But before we get into that, I want to lay the context for this. This is very, very important. As I've said here many times, and as I've written many times, Marxism and Americanism are incompatible. What I've also said here many times, and I've written, is that Islamism and Americanism are incompatible. Now, what do I mean by that? Is that because I hate Muslims? Has nothing to do with that. Nothing whatsoever. But you got to be able to speak the truth. You know, you got to be able to speak the truth, whether it's Carlson or Bannon or the rest of them. And you got to be able to speak the truth about this. This is life and death stuff. As an example, the regime that runs Iran is not going to stop. And there's only so much a president can do in his term. We took out their nukes. The prime minister defeated them militarily. But they're not going to stop. Why? Because they are zealots. They are fanatics. They're throwbacks to the 7th century. Let me explain. First, let's talk about ourselves. I think this is important. This is a little cerebral, and that's important. I like to get back to cerebral. We're going to get out of the sewer now. We're going to talk Mark talk. You and I, we believe God is the sovereign. I don't care if you're an atheist or an agnostic. You don't have to believe that. But you benefit from it. And I'll explain that in a minute, too. The people in this country benefit from the Judeo-Christian belief system, whether they are Jewish or Christian or not. You don't have to be a Jew. You don't have to be a Christian. But you benefit from the Judeo-Christian value, belief, principle system. You also benefit from the Enlightenment. From the Enlightenment. Now, this is all in my new book, by the way, on power. In one section of it. It's not the whole thing. But I want you to hear me out, because this affects what's going on right now in New York and the whole country and Iran and all the rest of it. We believe God is the sovereign. Read your Declaration of Independence. You don't even have to open the Bible. Read your Declaration of Independence. Natural law, natural rights, unalienable rights, universal truths. Where does all that come from? It doesn't come from man. Your founders in 1776 issued a Declaration of Independence. In essence, a declaration of war against the most powerful military on the face of the earth, the British. And they wanted to make it clear to the whole world why they are going to fight the most powerful military on the face of the earth. It was almost a forever war, you know. It went on for 7 years, 8 years. Put that aside. And what did they cite, among other things? The core of it was, we have unalienable rights. We have the right to be free. We have the right to representative government. There's natural law, natural rights, unalienable rights that no man, no government can give or take. The sovereign does. Okay, you with me right now? Now look, people can preach religion a hell of a lot better than I can. I'm not preaching religion. I'm preaching your history. Whether you like it or not, and most of you do. God is the sovereign. That's what the people who wrote the Declaration believed. That's what the people who fought for your freedom in your country believed. Hence, God's children. When mere mortals are making a government, God's children are the sovereign. The children of God, who he created, are the sovereign. Because he says so. You're the sovereign. Not a man-made government, not a Politburo, not a dictator. You're the sovereign. Okay? Now, what did the founders do? Well, we know they believed in that. That's the Declaration. And then they write this Constitution, right? Stick with me. I'm going to be doing this all hour. It's very, very important. And again, it's all in my book on power. If you like what I'm talking about, you find it intriguing and compelling, get the book because it's explained in much more detail in a book. But let me continue. This is just part of the book. And it relates to everything, including this friggin' nominee. Stick with me. The Constitution. Where did they get this stuff about representative government? Now, that's not in the Bible. That's not in the Torah. Consensual government. Where does that come from? That you have to divide power. Separation of powers. That you can't have an overbearing, centralized government that lords over you. Where do they get this stuff from? The Enlightenment. From John Locke, from Montesquieu, and others. Originally Aristotle. Among the Romans, Cicero. Many. But your framers of the Constitution were focused on Locke and Montesquieu. Montesquieu's mentioned multiple times in the Federalist paper. Now, how do we know they relied on all of this? Because they tell us. I include the letter. Thomas Jefferson was asked. He was accused. He said, you didn't come up with all these ideas, Jefferson. What makes you so great? You didn't come up with all these ideas. In effect, that's what the guy wrote him. And he wrote back, I never said I did. I used the accumulated, agreed upon knowledge that existed in our country. And of course, the Declaration speaks of this God 7 times. The Creator, Providence, so forth. And then he cites Aristotle and Cicero and Locke and Montesquieu and others. He tells us that's what he relied on when he made the first draft of the Declaration. That's what they embraced, all of them. So what does that tell you? As I explain in my book, America was founded with a fusion of Judeo-Christian values and the Enlightenment. Judeo-Christian values and the Enlightenment. Now let's turn to Marxism. Well, they don't believe in any religious values or faith values. They believe in the elimination of faith. They believe the state is the demigod. They believe the state gives rights, gives freedom, take freedom. For the people, of course. The people make all these decisions, and we know that's a lie, don't we? People make no decisions. There's no democratic aspect to it whatsoever. But the proletariat will rise up, destroy the bourgeoisie, destroy the existing vestiges of any prior society, the chains of prior societies, the feudal systems, agrarian systems, all systems, capitalism. The word capitalism was first written by Marx. We must destroy what exists, even the family relationship, the nuclear family. It must all be destroyed. Faith is nothing more than mysticism, and it stands into the way of progress and modernity and all the rest. That's in the book, too, just explaining it. That's Marxism. And the paradise will be the workers' paradise. Isn't it funny how they always predict what's going to be the end result? You can't predict any end result when you're talking about human behavior. There's so many fallacies in Marxism, and I touch on a number of them in the book. But I don't want to talk about Marxism. I want to talk about Islamism. Now, what does Islamism have in common with Marxism? Why is it that Islamists and Marxists are often the same, or they march together in Columbia, or UCLA, or Harvard, or whatever? Why is it that the Marxists like Bernie Sanders and the Islamists like Tlaib, the Marxists like AOC and the Islamists like Omar and down the list, why is it that they form such a tight alliance? Because of the means that justify the ends. What do the Islamists want? They tell us what they want. I don't have to imply anything. Just because they don't read it at the New York Times or they read it and they don't care, it's irrelevant to me. The Islamists want the same thing the Marxists want, the absolute destruction of the West, the absolute destruction of Judaism and Christianity and Judeo-Christian values. That's what Islamists want. That's why they march together. Now you'll say, well, the Islamists, they believe in God. The Marxists don't. Doesn't matter. It's only if they take the world over that will become relevant. Then they fight among themselves and decide. It's almost like Trotsky and Stalin. Two communists who fight and decide, no, this is the way we rule. No, this is the way that we rule. Not an exact parallel, but good enough. The Islamists and the Marxists at some point, God forbid if we don't exist anymore. And by the way, it's not just Jews and Christians. It's Muslims who don't believe what they believe. It's Hindus, it's Buddhists, it's atheists, it's agnostic. It doesn't matter. You don't conform. You don't conform for Marxism, you die. You don't conform for Islamism, you die. Nothing else matters. One says it's the calling of paradise on earth. The other says it's the only way to serve our God. It's the only way that we can reach our God is destroy all this other stuff that's in between. That's what they write. That's what they say. That's what they believe. That's why the regime in Iran, unless it is completely obliterated, is not going away. And neither are their nuclear ambitions. That's different from saying Trump should do it, the Israelis should do it, the world should do it. I'm not getting into that right now. I'm talking about the mindset. And so, of course, Islamists are the enemy. They're our enemy. They're the enemy of Americanism. They're the enemy of the West. That's what they are. That's why they say death to America, death to Israel. What they mean is death to everybody who disagrees with us. Everybody. And now one of them is the Democrat nominee for mayor of New York. Does that mean he's a terrorist who wants to kill everybody? No, of course not. In order to westernize the revolution, and we know this from, among other things, the 1993 bugging of a hotel room at the Marriott outside the Philadelphia International Airport, where Hamasians met, and they created CARE. And everything they said was taken down, and among other things, it's available, a lot of it for you on the internet, for the New York Times if you want to take a look. And by the way, as a footnote, to call Charlie Kirk a racist makes me sick to my stomach. He and I don't always agree, but he's earnest, okay? He's not a racist. He's not an anti-Semite. Some people are. Some people are, and I've called them out. He's not one of them. That's my 2 cents. And so what they decided to do is sort of Americanize themselves, get people elected to Congress, get people in the media, create CARE, which would claim to be the greatest civil rights, Muslim civil rights organization in America, where they push the agenda to try to take over cities, state governments, local governments, have a big presence in Congress. They play the long game. We do not in the West. We don't play any game. Half the time we don't even know. You know, they're playing football and we're playing bocce. It's like that. So this guy who's the Democrat nominee for the mayor of New York City is both a Marxist and an Islamist. He's a socialist. He's not a socialist. He's a Marxist. Socialism is bad enough. That's an economic theory. It's not an ideological doctrine. He's a Marxist who believes in socialism. And he's an Islamist. He said so and then denied it. He's an anti-Semite. Oh, no, I'm not. Just because I favor BDS, just because I'm opposed to Zionism, which means the state of Israel. That's what it means. Just because I believe in the globalization of the Intifada, the globalization of terrorism, No, I don't mean that. It's just a phrase of oppressed people. Now you know. It's in the book, On Power. Grab your copy because it's going to be relevant throughout the next 10 years.
Mark Levin.
The Great One makes your weekend even better. This is the best of Mark Levin.
By the way, let's say this. Stick with me. They're trying to diminish the accomplishment that took place. First, we have the isolationists who didn't want the accomplishment to take place. And if they had their way, Iran, let me even step back. If they had had their way, Israel would never have attacked Iran. Because Israel was waiting for the United States to give the word that we would back them in their endeavors. And the president did that. So that's where it really starts, even before we get to the taking out of their nuclear sites. It's just fantastic what this president did. So you can see where the Jew haters, the Israel haters, and truthfully, the fake MAGA, the 6%, 94% of MAGA supported what took place. The 6%ers. So I say, abandon these people, folks. Abandon them. They're crazy. Here's Pete Hegseth at a press conference at the NATO summit today. Cut 3, go.
There's a reason the president calls out fake news for what it is. These pilots, these refuelers, these fighters, these air defenders, the skill and the courage it took to go into enemy territory flying 36 hours on behalf of the American people and the world to take out a nuclear program is beyond what anyone in this audience can fathom. And then the instinct of CNN, the instinct of the New York Times is to try to find a way to spin it for their own political reasons to try to hurt President Trump or our country. They don't care what the troops think. They don't care what the world thinks. They want to spin it to try to make him look bad based on a leak. Of course, we've all seen plenty of leakers. And what do leakers do? They have agendas. And what do? Do they share the whole information or just the part that they want to introduce? And when they introduce that preliminary report that's deemed to be a low assessment, you know what a low assessment means? Low confidence in the data in that report. And why is there low confidence? Because all of the evidence of what was just bombed by 12 30,000-pound bombs is buried under a mountain, devastated and obliterated. So if you want to make an assessment of what happened at Fordo, you better get a big shovel and go really deep, because Iran's nuclear program is obliterated. And somebody somewhere is trying to leak something to say, oh, with low confidence, we think maybe it's moderate. Those that dropped the bombs precisely in the right place know exactly what happened when that exploded. And you know who else knows? Iran. That's why they came to the table right away, because their nuclear capabilities have been set back beyond what they thought were possible because of the courage of a commander-in-chief who led our troops, despite what the fake news wants to say.
Mm-hmm. And the president's there at NATO, and he's actually having to defend or parry with the media that's attacking him. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this country's been in many wars, many military battles and events. We've never had a media like this that roots against us. We've never had a fifth column like this of Democrats who want to impeach a president for doing exactly what he's able to do and doing it beautifully, flawlessly, brilliantly, as well as the isolationists. The same media is celebrating this guy, Zohran Mamdani, or however the hell you pronounce it. You understand what I mean? Your instincts about the media are correct. They covered up for Biden. They covered up the laptop. They hate us. It's not just Trump. He's the point of the spear. They'd love him to go to prison. That's not the point. He represents us. That's why they hate him. If he was one, you remember when it was the Reform Party, the Democrat Party, he was donating here and there. He was doing the deals as a businessman does in many instances. They loved him. Then when he identifies with the Republican Party, that's it. That's the end. He didn't even have to open his mouth. That was it, right there. Honestly, just like Elon Musk. Votes for Obama. He's great. He's doing this. Great. We love our Elon. He's terrific. Donations to, he's great. Signs up, joins with Trump, assists big time in the election, runs this Doge, and they're out to literally destroy him and imprison him too. That's what they do. Very well said, Pete. Very well said. Rubio was quite good at this summit, too. Cut 7, Mr. Producer, go.
First of all this stuff about the intelligence, this is what a leaker is telling you the intelligence says. That's the game these people play. They read it, and then they go out and characterize it the way they want it characterized, and they're leakers. This is the game they play. So that's number one. Number two, here's a fact. The conversion facility, which you can't do a nuclear weapon without a conversion facility, we can't even find where it is, where it used to be on the map. You can't even find where it used to be because the whole thing is just blackened out. It's gone. It's wiped out. It's wiped out. Then we dropped 12 of the strongest bombs on the planet right down the hole in 2 places. Everything underneath that mountain is in bad shape. And I refer you to the statement of the IAEA, Mr. Grossi. You know what he said? He said there was Iran, the way it looked the day before the attack, and what their nuclear program looks like now. 2 very different things. They are way behind where they were just 7 days ago. Now, anything in the world can be rebuilt. But now we know where it is, and if they try to rebuild it, we'll have options there as well. But all this leaker stuff, these leakers are professional stabbers. That's what they are. They go out and they read this stuff, and then they tell you what it says against the law, but they characterize it for you in a way that's absolutely false. There's no way Iran comes to the table if somehow nothing had happened. This was complete and total obliteration. They're in bad shape. They are way behind today compared to where they were just 7 days ago because of what the president did.
The Mossad says the same thing. The Mossad's all over that country. I think we've learned that. But these leakers are trying to undermine the great men and women of the military and what they've accomplished because they're trying to destroy Donald Trump. It's not going to work. The American people are patriotic. What the Democrats are doing is not going to work. The American people are patriotic. The isolationists, I have revealed them. I've been the point of the spear. You now know that Tucker Carlson is Chatsworth Catarlson. That's his name. You now know that Steve Bannon is a convicted criminal, a confessed criminal. And if he didn't get a pardon, he would have had to face other charges. So you now know he's pardon me, Bannon. That's who he is. That's who these people are. And if Gates opens his big mouth, I'm going to lay out what he is, too. It's unbelievable. It's in the public record. You can do it yourself, by the way. This Marjorie Trader Greene claims to stand up in principle and all the rest of it. Stabbing the president in the back, claiming she's more consistently principled than the head of MAGA. The hell is she? She's a nobody. A nobody with a low IQ. All right, I promised I posted something. And by the way, Fox isn't telling me to do or not do anything. I do this myself. Neither is Westwood One. Neither is Blaze. I'm a big boy. I posted something. I said, look, this lady needs help. She ought to get help. And so I'm going to back off. I actually believe that. In fact, I'm going to stop calling her Marjorie Trader Greene. I'm going to call her what she likes to be called. Marjorie, what the hell is it? I don't know. What is it? Marjorie Taylor Greene or MTG? I'm starting to feel really bad for her. It's just too easy, if you know what I mean. So I'm gonna leave her alone. Unless, of course, she pisses me off again, then I'll get right in her face. Fat Boy and Prep Boy, 2 different stories. 2 different stories. They're in the swamp, they're in the sewer. I much prefer to talk more cerebrally with you folks. So we'll do some jabbing and punching here and there, depending on how it goes, depending on how they try and undermine our military, undermine our president, undermine our country, how much grifting they're doing, how many lies they're telling, how much anti-Semitism they're spreading. It'll all depend. But I'd much rather do the kinds of things that I did at the top of this hour. I really would. But I believe my commitment to you and vice versa, we're a big family, that when I see injustices taking place, efforts to rip you off taking place, efforts to lie to you and mislead you taking place, I'm going to stand up to it. Hakeem Jeffries on the Morning Joe, this guy's a real lowlife. Absolute lowlife. Cut 8, go.
But the question, of course, is, was this strike successful in meaningfully pushing back Iran's
nuclear this is just, I can't stand this guy. I honestly can't stand it. But he's not alone. I can't stand any of these guys on the left. First, it's the War Powers Act. Then it's impeachment. But they tamped that down because they thought that would blow up in their face and have a backlash effect. Now it's, was it successful? How do we know it's successful? This is a horrendous political entity, this Democrat Party. Some of you old-timers, you're Democrats, you ought to abandon that party. It's nothing like the party you signed up for. It's nothing. It's filled with these Marxists. It's filled with these Islamists. It's filled with these political whores. That's what it is. That's what it is. That's why I wrote a book, The Democrat Party Hates America. They got many of the retailers very up. We can't put that book on the shelves. No, only books that attack Trump, you know. By the way, the good news is my new book, On Power, it's going to be everywhere. Very excited. You know, Costco put a very strict limit on books. Did you remember I talked about that, Mr. Producer? They're not going to carry many. They're going to carry my book, and they've already increased the order. My book's going to have more books in Costco's than most other books, which don't even appear anymore. I'm just telling you, this is going to take off. I want you to be part of this. I'm very, very anxious that you embrace this, because you're going to love it. I gave you a little feel for it, just a tiny, which you can get at Amazon.com right now, about $24. And let's say 10,000 of you, just 10,000, that's it. There's millions of you out there. 10,000 of you go in there, order the book. That discount will get even bigger, and the more that order. But I've seen that discount with my books go to 50%. 50%. This is why I say, don't wait. You're going to wait till the end. Or get the accumulated benefit, Levinites, of this audience, of getting a huge discount. I know how their system works. They don't even want me to tell you. I'm telling you. The more pre-orders they get, the greater the discount. This book could wind up costing you, what, $15, depending on how it goes.
Mark Levin.
We're giving you nothing but the best of Mark Levin.
By the way, on this great big bill, I could be wrong. If the Senate's making it look better, I'd like to know how. The House, Republicans, to their great credit, they looked at Medicaid. They saw illegal aliens were getting Medicaid. They wanted to tighten it up. They see that individuals who are sound of mind and body, who won't work at least 20 hours a week, were getting Medicaid, which is a welfare program. So they wanted to fix that and have a stronger work requirement in there and a couple of things like that. So the Senate parliamentarian, who is a bureaucrat, has apparently ruled that that's not part of a budget process. That's more policy-oriented and therefore does not fit within the reconciliation process. Now, what's all that jargon mean? What it means is, if you put it in the bill's subject to a filibuster as opposed to just a majority. And we know what the Democrats would do with it. So Senator Thune, as I read the various press reports, has said that he will not overturn the parliamentarian's decision. So now if this bill passes, it means that all this fraud and waste that's going to individuals who shouldn't get it under Medicaid, they'll get it. Okay? I'm cutting to the chase. No Washington, D.C. jargon. Number two, I guess I'm in the minority on this with some people. I don't think with you, but I think inside Washington. These deductions for home mortgage interest and property taxes, there used to be no cap on that. None whatsoever. None. But then they put a $10,000 cap on it. Because their view is, well, that'll cover most people. And so the Republicans went back, and quite frankly, some of the Republicans from northeastern states where taxes are ridiculous, they got it to go up, I think it was to $40,000. Now, that doesn't mean most of you need a $40,000 tax deduction, but this isn't just about Frank over there and Sally over there and Hakeem over there and so forth and so on. It's what's best for the country. My attitude is always, if you can keep more of your money, you earned it. You earned it, and you should keep as much as possible. This is Ron DeSantis' view here in Florida, where there's no income tax. All taxes are low except for these property taxes, and the state has nothing to do with it. It's the selfish, damnable counties paying off teachers' unions and everything else. So the property taxes are fairly high in Florida, and the state has no direct control over it. So he wants to address that. Well, in a lot of states, a lot of you Republicans live in blue or purple states, and your property taxes are significant. And so it seems the position of the Senate Republicans, and they're not the only ones, is screw you. You live in a blue state. They have to lower the property taxes, otherwise you're going to suffer. No. That's not the way it's supposed to work. At the federal level, we're talking about taxes. We should be able to keep as much as we can, whatever the state property taxes are. It's not about rewarding this state or that state. If you have MAGA people living in New York, living in California, living in Illinois, you know, we don't all live in one little neighborhood. They should be able to have as much of a tax deduction as possible as anybody else. No, but we're going to punish the blue state. What do you mean punish? You're talking about individual citizens. It's their money. It's your money. That's my view. I remember when Reagan was president, we had massive slash of taxes across the board. You know what we had? He got rid of the inheritance tax. Because you've already paid taxes on that money. And so it was zero. Zero. Not today. And then when it came to interest deductions and property tax reductions, there was no cap. No cap on that. No inheritance tax. And you know what happened, ladies and gentlemen? Massive economic growth. For the years that Donald Trump was president, our economy grew by almost 1/3. The entire damn economy grew by almost 1/3 because of his tax program. So the Republicans are acting like kind of rhinos. Well, the Senate says, we're not going to go along with this House thing of $40,000 deduction. We're going to go back to 10. Why? Well, we don't want to benefit these blue states. We never even had those arguments during the Reagan administration. It wasn't a matter of blue states, red states, purple states, polka dot states. It was a matter of the individual taxpayer. They're the ones who pay the taxes, not the state government of New York and California and Illinois and Rhode Island. A real human being with a family. You pay the taxes. So I have a strong disagreement with the Senate on this. And a strong disagreement with the Majority Leader Thune. He should override the parliamentarian. We didn't vote for the parliamentarian. You got a program that's full of bloat and fraud with illegal aliens and people who can work, able-bodied, able-minded people who won't work. And you're paying their health care. So the parliamentarian says, who gives a damn what the parliamentarian says? Who cares what the janitor says? I don't care. Not that there's anything wrong with them. It doesn't matter. Crazy. Crazy. All right, you got this Marxist Islamist, and he is a dangerous man. The Zohran Mamdani. He started his chapter of Students for Justice in Palestine. That is a Hamas terrorist front group. And they have hundreds of these entities on our college campuses. They are here to overthrow the country. He's a big supporter of BDS. BDS is an anti-Semitic, anti-Israel program worldwide where the anti-Semites get together and they want to destroy the economy of Israel by refusing to do business with them. We actually have liberal Republican Democrats like Chuck Schumer, like Jerry Nadler, and they're not alone, and many of them, who've now endorsed this guy. As my wife said. Why? Because the religion is the Democrat Party. Frankly, we Jews are stuck with people like this, and we have been for a long, long time. We really have. Self-haters, self-promoters. Every faith, by the way, every ethnicity, every background, it's the same damn thing. But I'm speaking now of my people and how infuriating it is. I have nothing in common with Schumer and Nadler. Nothing. Nothing. Zero. And they're willing to back somebody like this? Back somebody like this? Guy wants to start city-owned grocery stores, and we're going to talk about that next hour. He wants massive tax increases for business. He will not allow ICE in his city, even though that is not under his control, but that means he won't let the cops help work with ICE. So you're going to have productive people who are longtime New Yorkers leave the city, and you're going to have people come into the city who want welfare, who want freebies. You're going to have Islamists come in. I don't mean Muslims. I said Islamists. Of course, you'll have more Marxists come in, and you're going to have a disaster on your hands. The biggest city, the financial center of America. The city that was ground zero in 1775 for the Revolutionary War. The tax revolt. You know, I also discuss in the book, related to what's going on in New York and all this pablum about Marxism, a couple of things that you'll learn from the book on power as well. Marxism was always flawed for a number of reasons. Number one, the great Second Industrial Revolution began in around 1870. Most of what Marx and Engels wrote preceded 1870. They saw the first Industrial Revolution, which was okay, but it was the second one where there was this explosion of growth and inventions and development and so forth and so on. When Marx was writing about capitalism, a word he termed, that didn't exist. It didn't even exist. Number two, Marxism and all these other isms that predict the promised land, the end of society, are flawed. How can you predict the end of society? I don't mean that it will end, but that what the final society will look like. How do you know that? See, we don't do that here. Our system isn't set up that way, that we're going to do this, and this to meet the promised land, to get to the promise. That's not what we do. We set up a realistic system. We have. Our founders did, framers through the Constitution, to live by day. We hope to preserve it for our children and grandchildren as long as we possibly can. But we don't say the American government at the very end, at the pinnacle, is going to look like X. No, we don't. And yet Marxists do that. Islamists do that. It's another great fault, as I explain in the book. But I also explain in the book, to counter this Marx, they keep calling him a socialist. Socialism is an economic policy. And Marx said, socialism is the last step before communism. So when I talk about this guy, Zohran Mamdani, he's a Marxist. He supports economic socialism, just like AOC, just like Bernie Sanders and so forth, okay? Now, I use this word Marxism. When I used it on talk radio and Fox and everything, nobody would use it. They kept saying socialism, progressivism, left-wingism. And so I would tell them off air and on, stop it. And stop calling them progressives. That's their own nomenclature. They gave it to themselves. They're not progressive. Marxism, so now you hear the word Marxism. 3-4 years ago, people were afraid to, oh my God. This guy's a Marxist Islamist. They're afraid of using the word Islamist. Hopefully not anymore. But I explain in the book, let's just step back a second. When you go into a grocery store, and we're going to have one of the great grocers on the program in about, 10, 15 minutes. Not a big chain grocery store, but a very important family chain of grocery stores in New York. You have more choices of every kind in every category of food and drink than the kings and queens of the wealthiest monarchies had 100 years ago. You realize that? You have more choices than the Rothschilds had, than the Rockefellers had originally, than the Vanderbilts had. You have more choices today. As just a regular American going into a grocery store, going to a supermarket, you have even more. How did that happen? By government? We take things for granted. We don't even realize where they come from. You will understand it when you read my book on power. We complain about the airports. I get it. So do I. We complain about air flight. Step back a minute. Those of you who fly, you get on a jet. It's air conditioned. Maybe you're on one of these jets that have television. Maybe not. Maybe they have Wi-Fi. You can plug in, maybe listen to whatever you want. On an iPhone. On a laptop. And if you're lucky, maybe they'll serve you some peanuts or some popcorn or something like that. Maybe not, but you'll get a drink, right? Soda or juice or booze or whatever it is. You're 35,000 feet in the sky. You don't even realize it. That didn't exist 100 years ago. Nothing like it. Nothing like it. Look what we take for advantage. You walk into your room and you turn the lights on. Where does that come from? You turn the faucet on and there's water. It's clean. You want hot water, you got hot water. You want cold water, you have cold water. At your fingertips. At your fingertips. Did that come from Marxism? Or did that come from capitalism? We complain about healthcare. The Marxists are good at this because everybody's annoyed with insurance company and costs and okay. I got it. Is there another country on the face of the earth where you have access to the kinds of prescription drugs and healthcare that you have in the United States? These socialist regimes, economically, socialist regimes, they're using the medicines for the most part that we invent in the United States of America. We call big pharma. Big pharma. Where hundreds of thousands of your fellow Americans work. Where they invest enormously in capital to try and develop drugs for the rarest of disease. You go into the healthcare system such as it is, with these socialist systems, whether it's Britain or France or you name it, you have a fairly rare disease. They don't have any medicine for you, and they're not going to pay for it. They come to the United States, these people. In Canada, where they have a socialist healthcare system, they come to the United States. The lines are long. The quality of care is average. In the United States, the lines, we may think they're too long. They're the shortest in the world, on the planet. With the most cutting-edge technology, cleanest equipment in rooms, the most cutting-edge drugs. It's not perfect, but it is the most perfect system in the entire world, even though we complain about it. What created that? Capitalism. Capitalism. Almost everybody has an automobile. Some families have 2 or 3. What created that? Capitalism. You want heat in the winter? You got heat in the winter. You want air conditioning in the summer? You got air conditioning in the summer. You may not like the cost, but for the most part, the cost is higher because of government. Government regulations, government limitations on drilling and production. But there it is. Light switches on, the water works. You got heat when you need it, air conditioning when you need it. You can get in your car and go. That's capitalism. It's amazing, isn't it, Mr. Producer? And it's attacked because people don't know how to discuss it. What about equality and freedom under capitalism? Capitalism is the most equal system on the face of the earth. Why? Because rich people can become poor and poor people can become rich. It's an amazing thing. So many rich people in this country didn't start out that way. They weren't trust fund babies. They weren't Rockefellers. They weren't Swanson food, frozen foods. We used to celebrate success. We used to celebrate the possibility that anybody could become anything. And you can in America. You can't in these autocratic regimes. They have striations. They have classes.